Winning silver is supposed to feel amazing. So why do so many silver medalists look absolutely miserable standing on the podium, while the person in third place is smiling like they just won the lottery? This isn't just a strange coincidence. It happens again and again, at the Olympics, in job interviews, in exams, in everyday life. The person who came second often feels worse than the person who came third. And once you understand why, you'll start noticing it everywhere. Here's the setup. Imagine two athletes at the end of a race. One finishes second, just a fraction of a second behind the winner. The other finishes third, comfortably ahead of fourth place. Logically, second place is the better result. You beat more people. You stood higher on the podium. But logic has almost nothing to do with how we actually feel. Researchers actually studied this using photographs from the Olympics. They looked at the faces of athletes right after their event, before they even knew their final ranking on paper. And the pattern was clear. Bronze medalists smiled more. Silver medalists often looked tense, disappointed, even a little lost. So what's really going on? Here's the first insight, and it's the key to everything else. Our feelings don't come from the result itself. They come from the story we tell about what almost happened. Think about the silver medalist. Their brain doesn't compare them to the person in 10th place. It compares them to the gold medalist. The story becomes, I was so close. One small mistake, and I would have won everything. That gap between what happened and what almost happened creates real pain. Now think about the bronze medalist. Their brain compares them to the person who finished fourth, the one who went home with nothing. The story becomes, I could have missed the podium completely, and instead I'm standing here with a medal. That comparison creates relief, even joy. Psychologists call this counterfactual thinking. It simply means imagining a different outcome that didn't actually happen. And here's what nobody tells you, those imagined outcomes affect your emotions just as strongly as the real ones. Let's look at the second insight, because this goes far beyond sports. The same pattern shows up in ordinary life all the time. Picture someone applying for a job. They make it all the way to the final round, competing against just one other candidate. Then they lose. That person often feels worse than someone who was rejected after the very first interview. Why? Because I almost got it hurts more than I was never really in the running. Or think about missing a flight by 2 minutes compared to missing it by 20 minutes. Both mean the same result. You didn't catch the flight. But missing it by 2 minutes feels like torture because your mind keeps replaying the version where you made it. Here's where most people get this completely wrong. They assume that better outcomes always create better feelings. But your brain doesn't measure outcomes on their own. It measures the distance between what happened and what could have happened instead. Think about a student who studies for a big exam and scores 89, when 90 was the cutoff for the highest grade. That single point can ruin their entire week. Meanwhile, a classmate who scores 65, expecting to fail completely, walks away feeling relieved and even proud. The first student technically did better. But the second student's story was I could have failed, while the first student's story was I was 1 point away from perfect. 1 point of difference in the score, and a completely different emotional outcome. Now for the third insight, and this one is honestly a little uncomfortable. We often choose our own comparison point without even realizing it, and that choice quietly controls how satisfied we feel with our entire life. Imagine two people who both earn a decent salary. One of them compares their income to a wealthy friend and feels behind, frustrated, like they're failing. The other compares their income to how they lived 5 years ago and feels proud of the progress. Same salary. Two completely different emotional worlds. The only difference is the comparison they picked. This explains something strange about success. You can achieve something impressive and still feel disappointed, simply because you were quietly comparing yourself to an even bigger win in your head. So what can you actually do with this? Here's a simple practice. The next time you feel disappointed about a result, pause and ask yourself one question: what's the realistic alternative I'm comparing this to? Not the perfect version, the realistic one. If you didn't get the promotion, are you comparing yourself to getting it, or to not having the job at all? If your English isn't as fluent as you want yet, are you comparing yourself to a native speaker, or to where you were 1 year ago? You can't stop your brain from making comparisons. That's simply how humans think. But you can choose which comparison to focus on, and that choice changes everything about how a result feels. So the next time you find yourself feeling like a silver medalist, disappointed even though you did something genuinely impressive, remember the bronze medalist standing right next to you, smiling, just grateful to be on the podium at all. The result didn't change. Only the story did.